everybody. This is Bill Campbell from Rosarium Publishing. Thanks for dropping in. I am here with a guest. We're talking about the Adventures of Lion Man graphic novel that will be coming out in the summer that we are currently running a BackerKit for. This is the launch party. Right now, we have Michael Dando, Yvette, Lisa Indlovu, Damian Duffy, and John Jennings should be joining us soon, and maybe David Brame, I'm assuming. Who knows? Time differences. What can you do? So first, I'll tell you about myself. I'm Bill Campbell. I'm the head cook and bottle washer of Rosarium Publishing. We do comics and science fiction, focus mainly on brown folks, and we publish people from all around the world, and I do mean that literally. Our tagline is introducing the world to itself. You can go check out the website, check out our catalog, and you'll see that I'm not lying. But right now, we are here for the BackerKit campaign for Lion Man. You can check on the link. You can check out the campaign while we are chatting away. You can, of course, pledge early. People who pledge early with any physical copies level will be getting a free 8x10 glossy from David Brame, one of his versions of Lion Man. And tonight, the first 30 people who give to a physical level will be getting a free mystery comic, which, I'm sure the fanfare on the other end of this is going crazy right now, just hearing that. So anyway, who wants to introduce themselves first? This anybody. I mean, we can go alphabetically. There you go. That's you, Michael.
All right. Sure. John is in the chat. He is backstage ready and willing to go. There he is.
All right. Looks like you're in the Phantom Zone. Sorry.
That's all right. We're introducing ourselves and we're going in alphabetical order, so you will be third.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Dando. I am an associate professor of English and education at St. Cloud State University in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I do a lot of things. I'm an education researcher. I am the director of language arts education here at the university, and I'm also the director of the Institute for Speculative Design and Education, which basically means we look at visions of the future in communities, in classrooms, and learning spaces, and work with communities to realize those things. And part of that work is through comics. And so I'm thrilled to be a part of this project. What else? What else do we need? I'm a Gemini.
What are your turn-ons and turn-offs?
My turn-ons and turn-offs?
Yeah.
Well,
no,
Bill,
please don't.
It's
you don't need to know that. Actually, no. Dear Rosarium.
Rosarium, exactly right. Exactly right. That's my turn-on.
Dear Rosarium, I never thought this would happen to me.
Right. Dear Rosarium, thank you for including me on this project.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Damien?
Hey, I'm Damian Duffy. I'm a lecturer at the School of Information Science, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I'm an award-winning graphic novelist. I've adapted about to be 3 novels by Octavia Butler into graphic novels with John Jennings down there in the corner on my screen. I don't know where he is on your screen. I can't see you. And what else? Comic scholar. I played a small part in this project, so I'm just happy to be here and cheer on everyone else and, celebrate the glory that is Lion Man. Now, let's talk about my turn-ons and my turn-offs. Okay. So, John, you just want to go ahead? I thought you would interrupt me before.
Well, yeah, I already know what they are, so.
I mean, maybe you shouldn't know.
I'll put it in the chat. Anyway, I'm John Jennings, and I'm a professor of media and cultural studies at the University of California, Riverside. And I am a comics creator. I write, draw, edit, publish comics primarily about people of color and speculative fiction. Along with Dr. Damian Duffy, I worked on the Octavia Butler books, Kindred, Parabola and Parabola Talents. And I'm also a curator of comics for my own imprint, which I should not mention at the moment. But I do a lot of stuff with comics. I teach comics in classes and stuff, and I work um, in the area called Black speculative fiction, or like Afrofuturism, whatever you want to call it. And again, I'm very excited about the project. I'm a big nerd about public domain characters, and I think that's one of the things that the project is all about. So happy to be here.
Yvette?
Hi, I'm Yvette Lisandzovu. I'm a professor of creative writing, also a speculative fiction author. My book, Drinking from Graveyard Wells, deals with the fantastic, Afro-surrealism, Afrofuturism, magical realism. Super excited to be a part of this project. And yeah, I can't wait for all of us to talk about it.
All right. So before I ask my next question, don't forget this is the Adventures of Lion Man BackerKit launch party. Even though the launch isn't for another week, you can pledge today. So please visit the link that's in the comments. And so now, next question. So basically, I want you to either Mike or John or both of you tell us like the history of Lion Man, so that people understand exactly what it is that we're doing here.
Okay, go, Mike.
Well, I was going to defer to you because I'll be honest. John Jennings is the person who turned me on. You talk about turn-ons and turn-offs. John Jennings is the first person that turned me on to Lion Man. What a lot of folks will think of, when they think of comics, they think of black superheroes. We'll think of particular figures, but we got to go back to 1947, right? And jump in and correct me on my dates and times. We got to go back to 1947, and we have to look at the publishing imprints. We have to look at the history of the comics culture, right? And there were no black superheroes. We're about 10 years in, right? With Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, Blue Beetle, and a bunch of characters. But some journalists from Philadelphia got together. All folks of color, all black folks got together and decided that they were going to put their own imprint together. And they called it ALL NEGRO COMICS, and it was Orrin C. Evans. And I'm trying to remember, John, who were the other two? It was Orrin C. Evans.
I forget. Honestly, I know one gentleman was his brother, and I forgot who the other person was.
Bill Driscoll.
That's right. That's right. And among, right, and so it was an anthology. So there were a bunch of amazing characters that were in there. Ace Harlem is in there. It was just a bunch of different kinds of comics, and among them was a short piece called Lion Man. And John Jennings, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay.
And in that story, we get what John will kind of tell us about.
Yeah. So what's interesting, I mean, like a lot of comics of the era, I mean, most of the comics were either start off as anthologies or what have you. It was basically, taking the same path as far as like format goes. But Lion Man was a short anthology piece that really kind of plays off of the kind of jungle hero genre, much like Tarzan or like the Phantom or things of that nature. So he's a character who's African American actually, and he's sent from the United States via the United Nations to guard a mystical mountain or magic mountain, of uranium on the Gold Coast of Africa, which is interesting because it's probably situated, around Ghana and other West African spaces, countries there. And so he basically, like a lot of those characters, guards against colonization, essentially, right? Basically that, he's trying to protect physical resources, and natural resources from colonizers or poachers. And of course, he has his, his arch enemy, I guess, Dr. Blut Sangro and his minion, what's his name? Bross, the
Brosser.
Brosser, the Beachcomber. That's right.
That's right.
Brosser, the
That's
Beachcomber.
right.
And he also has a sidekick named Bubba, which is really interesting as well, who has an affectation for large machine guns. And so,
Yeah, that was kind of brutal.
yeah, it's kind of wild up in here, you know. So,
Heavy artillery, man.
Yeah, heavy artillery, you know. So it was interesting to see, you know, a character like that. I mean, you know, some would argue that he wasn't a superhero. He definitely falls within that like kind of nebulous space between like, you know, the pulps and superhero comics, you know.
Right.
But it could be argued that he is, you know what I'm saying? And I like that
Right.
too. But yeah, but that came out in 1947, and there was never a second issue of All Negro Comics, even though it was laid out. Some were stating that because the mainstream, mostly, well, all white publishers discovered that, you know, they were doing this, or found out they were doing this, and then would sell them paper or other like materials to print the second issue. So, you know, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just like I read that they printed it in Pittsburgh.
Huh.
and then,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then like, yeah, and then like once they found out that they were all black, they're like, yeah, we're not printing again. Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things I think that's interesting, and if you go back and if there are, you know, PDFs available, a couple of the panels in the original, you have, you know, Lion Man literally like knocking out colonizers, like knocking the guy's, you know, pith helmet off in 1947, right? Which is one of my favorite panels, because it's literally that same thing that, you know, not today colonizer, that thing has, that energy has been there since the inception of, right, as you said, John, the milieu or the format had been there. This is the first time that there was kind of that kind of spin
Mhm.
I
on
mean,
that genre.
Bubba takes an M60 to them. Like he
Yeah.
went like
It's not for play. No, that's
like you thought it was cool, but he was like, I don't know, man. Bubba might be fun at a party.
Mhm.
Like, you know, like,
Yeah. A
so then
gun party.
how did you two like hook up with Brain to like, because for folks that don't know, that it basically started off, this project started off with John and David Brain. You guys did a single issue, right? So, and you did it for St. Cloud, right?
Mhm. Well, you know, it's
So
funny.
could you explain how that all happened?
I don't remember a lot of it because it was during the COVID, you know, era. But you know, I just want to say too, it's like, you know, that particular character or those characters have fascinated me for a while. Me and Damien were actually playing around with the characters too for different things too. You know, might actually go back to it. I don't know, but you know, I basically used public domain character redesigns to kind of like um, rest from working on more traumatic things like Parable of the Sword and Parable. Yeah, and so I would kind of like pretend that Lion Man had never been, you know, that he had these different iterations, you know, throughout time, and it was a way to kind of like let out stress and stuff after just, you know, just sitting there. So and that's kind of like one of the things that started happening. So I had like, you know, a Lion Man for like the 1950s, 60s, 70s, that kind of thing. And I did do a piece for an online, you know, article that kind of like pretended it did the same thing, where it kind of pretended that Lion Man never stopped being published, kind of thing. And honestly, I'm not sure, you know, when we decided that we were going to do this. Mike, maybe you could be my other
Yeah.
memory. Like,
Yeah. So I won't get too far into the weeds, but the research that I do is I work with young folks, particularly like middle and high school folks, in doing speculative design work, speculative imagination, particularly as, you know, Vet and John were talking about, in Afrofuturists, you know, in that space. And you have to think all the way back pre-pandemic. John, when we first did, we met up at Teachers College in Columbia, and we were working on some physical fabrication stuff, laser
Mhm.
print, 3D printers. Realizing like we would invite students to come up with speculative artifacts that would think about ways to address a problem that or a challenge or something that they just wanted to see, and then design it with some of the folks there and then make it. And that was great until the pandemic hit, and then being enclosed in tiny spaces altogether was not recommended. So what we did was we pivoted to digital, and I said, John, what do you think about? Because they had come in and they had talked, him and John and Stacy Robinson had come in and had worked with the students. To design, right, doing like professional collaboration, and they had talked about what speculative design is, and then I had heard John talk about Lion Man before, as I had mentioned earlier, about, hey, what if this had never been canceled? And I said, that's a great speculative idea. Can we, we're figuring out how to use all this Zoom, like all this technology. What if we did that? What if we said, use this as we'll call it a mentor text, and then students in their own spaces can create, right, their own stories, right? They can look at the designs and they can use this as inspiration, use this as a jumping off point, whether they want to create their own artifact, right? Whether they want to create their own timeline, their own worlds, their own whatever, their own languages. And so that was part of my education research, which I've written about. I got these books behind me, which that's, as an academic who's looking for tenure, I wrote about those things, but I also made sure that we included the work that the students did, right? So it wasn't taking any narratives; it was putting those narratives out into the sort of academic or education, I should say, bloodstream. So, for instance, the National Council of Teachers of English, we're going to be putting out some stuff there, but it's all based on the work that we've done, and we were able to have it featured in a number of places. John, I don't know how we got into where we got into after we put it in, but I don't know how we got into the Met Gallery, but
Oh,
we did.
yeah. Yeah, that was wild. Well, that was because
Go ahead.
what was happening was I was on a planning committee for this Afrofuturist period room at the Met, and the whole thing was about dealing with the displacement of Seneca Village because of just making room for that space, and and so the whole idea was to create a room of one of the descendants of one of the people from Seneca Village, but the idea is that Seneca Village, that disruption never happened. So again, it fits into the narrative. It's called let's see, Before Yesterday We Could Fly is the name of it, and it was put together by the Hannah Beekler, who was the Oscar-winning set designer for Black Panther and other things. Yeah, and so not only is that in there, but some of the other books we publish are in there. So we sent them a copy of it, and they decided to put it on the table of the character, and so that's kind of like how it ended up there. So yeah.
So this project that we were doing, it has 4 stories, maybe.
Let's see.
It has the original Lion Man thing, strip from All Negro Comics, and then John, you wrote 2, right? The Tower and the Lion Outside, right? And then Yvette and I wrote Plague of Nations, and then there's also the public domains thing that we did where we invited 20 artists to come up with their own iterations of public domain characters, which we can talk about in a minute. And this is where you step in, Damien, because John was telling me that you'd already done a Phantoma project. Now, I was like reading about Phantoma, and like I think it was like the wildest superhero
so awesome,
ever.
Yeah.
Like she like morphs stuff and flies and zaps people. I mean, I don't even know. Like in our public domains thing, Krista Kasana like did a version of her as well. But what got you on Phantoma? Like, could you tell us about her?
Yeah. So yeah, Phantoma, created by Fletcher Hanks, who made just the weirdest super characters ever. And Phantoma is one of that. Like, none of them have like rules or logic or anything. It's just like whatever he decided to draw next, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I was familiar with Phantoma. There was a more recent series with her, like a comic book series from maybe 7-8 years ago or something.
Yeah,
It was like a kind of modern take, right? And John was talking about like the public domain characters, and he and I had been talking about the characters from All Negro Comics now and again, because I had kind of a bizarre idea for like a giant universe-ending Crisis crossover, like with all those characters. Just put it out there if anybody wants to, do that later. But
Crisis of like Domains Earth or something like that.
It's sort of, yeah. It was at first it was just going to be the All Negro Comics characters, so it was going to be All Negro Crisis. But I don't know.
Yeah, we've had enough of those actually.
yeah. Of course.
We're
of
good.
Course.
It's a great idea, though. Baby, go ahead.
It was going to be like it went along with this whole alternate history thing. Anyway, but in the midst of that, there was supposed to be an anthology of public domain characters that John, through his interest in those characters, had committed to doing a story for with David Brame. I forget the order of who decided to do what, but it ended up where I was going to write it and David was going to draw it. John had kind of the overarching story idea of like, what if Phantoma was black wrestler, was in the 50s? Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's been a minute. But yeah, so kind of going off documentary about actual like black women wrestlers in the 50s. So, and I needed some kind of like John, I think I needed something to do that wasn't the super traumatic Octavia Butler Parable of the Sower talents work, or just looking at the world. It all blurs together. Anyway, so I ended up, John had the story of like, what if she's a wrestler and also vampires? And I was like, cool, we'll go with it. So then it kind of ended up being a short story that, similar to the From Dusk Till Dawn movie, takes kind of a left turn halfway through into vampires. So you get kind of a tiny historical perspective on what I was very inspired by the documentary. So like what real life wrestlers had to go through is just like day to day dealing with, life on the road and being women and women of color in towns that weren't welcoming to them. So like America, and
I've heard of it.
Yeah. But then she ends up finding a home in this like supernatural wrestling federation instead. That was pretty much the genesis of it. Wrote the script. David drew it. John, I think you colored that one, right?
Yeah, I colored it. You lettered it.
Yeah.
And actually, it was funny because it became like this kind of mashup project where like.
Oh yeah, I drew a thing in there too.
Yeah, right. Damien actually drew the title card, and it was pretty clever. He used it as the intro. Actually to as far as like the cast of the.
Yeah, it was like the fight card.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a fight card.
Yeah.
And actually, I did one myself actually too. That was pretty cool. And the other thing is we got I don't know how Steve Bissett got involved with the project, but
he drew a page.
Yeah, but Steve Bissett drew like a scene, that I colored, in the book too. So that was pretty cool while they're wrestling. So it became like this kind of, I don't know. I mean, it was a fun like mashup project. And what happened was the gentleman that I was supposed to be doing, or we were supposed to be doing this project with. It's one of them actually got pretty ill, and I was trying to be patient because I really loved what I saw with the rest of the, it'd be like a great addition to the collection, but I couldn't. It just didn't go anywhere, And so I was like, man, we did all this work, and I wanted to use it. And being that we were already doing work around public domain work, I thought like, oh, well, it becomes like a true anthology, right? Whereas, it's already anthology, but it's like having a lead anthology character and then having like a backup story, and it was pretty fun. It was a pretty strong backup story too. So we end the collection with the Phantom story.
So Yvette, I don't know. Do you want to tell folks our origin story and then how this game came about?
Yeah. So Bill was one of my instructors at Clarion West. Were you week 4 or week 3?
I was week 5. Okay. I was the week where y'all were exhausted.
Right. You came after the burnout week. So Clarion West is like a 6-week writing workshop, and burnout week is week 4. So by week 5, we were all like done and exhausted and looked like
it was great.
We were ready to go out the window. Right. Yeah. But it was Bill's been a great mentor, and he brought me on board to this project. I was super excited to hop on. I've never worked on comics before, so it was a really nice challenge. We met up over the course of a week at a bakery cafe in Worcester, Massachusetts. If anybody has heard of that place, terrible coffee, terrible food, but we storyboarded it, worked on the story and how we can make it more modern, how we can make it beloved, and yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like I came up with it was basically, well, as you said, as John said, this is like a mashup project, and since he's like a Black American in Africa doing stuff, I was like, well, I've never been there, so I don't really want to do a story. But the funny thing with Yvette was, I was like the editorial guest for Clarion West, guest instructor. So basically, they're like done by week 5. They're like utterly exhausted, and you guys went through like hell on earth. There was like all kinds of chaos and crime, like in your first place, and y'all were like shell shocked.
They moved our accommodation to a whole different area,
place where people weren't getting shot.
Right.
Yeah. And then like your food was horrible. So like Jelly, P. Jelly Clark, he called me up after his week. It was like, this is crazy. And then so I was like expecting like to like really have to earn my keep. But what ended up happening was, so he was reading like novelettes. Like you guys were giving him like stories like 20,000 words and 15,000 words and just like all this stuff because he's like one of the beginning instructors. But by the time I got there, y'all were like, yeah, here's my 2,000 word piece. And I was just like, this was great. And I was telling the instructors that it was like this great vacation for me. And they were like, we have never heard that from one of your instructors before in our life. But the funny thing with Yvette was like, she was quiet like the whole time. And then she throws down this story, which was just absolutely fantastic and funny. And I was just like, wait, you're funny? And so like that's how she stuck in my head because the short story was like fantastic. And after you guys spent like a month writing stories, I was just like, I couldn't believe the level of talent like so many of the students there had, that they could actually bang out like a good a good stories like after like a month of just absolute hell. So so since you're from Zimbabwe and then like the Mugabe was sort of like the model anyway, I was just like, this totally made sense. So you've never done comics, but like I never collaborated with anybody before in writing something. So that was a lot of fun doing that. Hold on a second. So you're this is like the commercial break, right? Like, hey everybody, this is the Lion Man BackerKit launch party. If you would like to pledge now, please feel free, even though we don't officially launch for another week. People who pledge on the any of the physical copy levels before the launch will receive an 8x10 glossy of David Brame's version of one of David Brame's versions of Lion Man, the black and white one. I think that shows up on one of the pages, one of our promos,
Yeah.
and then the first 30 people who do physical copies again will receive a mystery comic for free. Right. Don't forget to follow the campaign on our teaser page. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. One day, I think I will actually have a Rosarium YouTube channel, so get in early. So there was that. But yeah. So I think for me, like our story is Yvette and my story is a plague on the nation, where a pandemic helped spur a rebel movement to take out the doddering president. And I think the fun thing that working with you was just so much nuance and authenticity that like I felt like it really added like so much more than I possibly ever could have done. So, like you had like flowers, and like you actually had like a bigger history of Mugabe that you can make fun of, and they just had all these things that I thought was like absolutely fantastic. So thank you on that, because that was just
the project was just a way for me to make fun of Mugabe.
I mean, he didn't go out well. It's like every time I listen to Bob Marley's Zimbabwe, I'm just like, man, we had so much hope.
Right.
Yeah, John, why don't you tell us more about your stories? Because I was just like reading up on them, or again just before this.
Yeah. So let me think. All right. So one thing that always gets like brought up, even though it's probably I can't see it being true, is that people's like, oh, before Black Panther there was Lion Man, and they're always like, this character inspired Black Panther, and I was like, no, probably not. I'm thinking, yeah, because that is very unlikely, But the thing about Black Panther is that he is the incarnation of a panther god, right? Like, so and in the comics, of course, it's made up or what have you, and Dennis Cowan did a run on Black Panther where there was this physical manifestation of some panther god, right? And of course, when Ta-Nehisi Coates does it, he borrows from Egyptian mythology and other other belief structures from West Africa, like the Orishas and stuff. So he kind of does this mashup, of different types to actually make the panther god function. So using that logic, I was like, well, first thing, there probably wouldn't be lions in that area of Africa, right? I mean, it'd probably be leopards, I'm imagining. But yeah, it's leopards. Yeah. So lions, lions would probably not be in Ghana and other places there, other countries nearby. It would most likely be leopards. So that's a problem, right? And so it made me start thinking like, well, when they created Lion Man, they're just thinking like, oh, there are lions in Africa, right? So what I'm saying? So even Oren and his brothers, his business partners were kind of like, to a certain degree, stereotyping Africa,
No, I mean, it's very much of its time.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So anyways, I started thinking like, if I was going to create an actual analog of Black Panther, then I would have to find lion gods in Africa, right? And of course, Egypt has a ton of them, actually, So what I started doing, I came up with these ideas about how to get those gods to actually connect with West Africa. It was some of it was contrived, some not so much. Anyway, so one of them is Mahes, who is a lion-headed god, who has a flaming sword, and he has really cool nicknames. Like he's called the Scarlet Lord. You know why? Because he's bathed in the blood of his enemies. I was like, yo,
that'll do it.
His favorite thing is protecting.
If only we could all live that life.
I know, right? He's a son of Ra and Sekhmet, and he protects the sun from a giant serpent called Apep that tries to eat it every day, and so he fights every day. The other thing about the character is that about this particular god is that protects the weak and the innocent, and he's actually like a stalwart supporter of justice. And I was like, this sounds like a superhero to me. So I just figured out a way to actually like have that particular god be one of the inspirations for these different new iterations of Lion Man. And the other one, which is my favorite, is a character called Tutu. It's a guy called Tutu. Tutu is a Sphinx god that actually lives in dreams and protects the dreamers, from nightmares and from demons and stuff. And that's where we got the idea to do a version of Lion Man that lived inside of dreams and actually protected us from, our psychological traumas and demons and stuff. And that's, yeah. So the tower is kind of like this main character. Oh, by the way, Lion Man didn't have an alter ego. That's the other. He was just Lion Man. So yeah. So I came with two because we have like these different versions. One is Daniel Dennison, right? And he's the he's the Mahes version, and then there's another version called Michael Oren. I named him after Oren C. Evans. So so that particular version, he's a scientist, and he puts on this. So in that particular one, Bubba is like an AI that helps him go into the dream world or whatever, and he fights in this tower to save these kids who've been in comas, and Sangro is kind of like colonizing the dreamscape. So that's kind of like the gist of it,
Yeah. I think the thing that just going through it that I liked was, and you're definitely the inspiration behind it was just talking about the old comics anthologies, right? And like even we were talking about like how like the main character isn't even necessarily in some of the old ones, right?
That's right.
Just how we pulled in Phantoma, but also so like I think it's because like your stories are fairly cosmic, right? And nature, and then we have like this spy thriller, and then you have like the original one with yet again M60 to the guy, like that was
and it's straight up like jungle adventure story, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's so it's cool that because all of them are usually like blonde white women, right? Like Queen of the Jungle, yes, and all that stuff. But and then we have like Phantoma too, and I think like I really like that, the kind of free spirit that kind of has. Like, Yvette said that he couldn't be part of the UN. And I totally agreed. So what did we do? The Nkrumah Du Bois Garvey Institute or something like that?
Yeah, we created a Pan-African Institute.
Yeah. So I just kind of like just the playfulness of that, and just sort of the playfulness that we could just have with the whole public domain, which is probably what inspires you most, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. And also, it gives you, I don't know, because you have the research component of it, because you're trying to make the characters fit in the different eras or what have you. And then and I think some of the figuring out the story logic from like the why from the 1940s is actually pretty fun too. You know what I'm saying? Or how do you use elements from those stories and then rethink how they could function in these different eras? That's actually kind of it's a really really cool like distraction, like Damien was saying, because not only like working on something like the parables, but also just being in the COVID era and this level of like uncertainty, the George Floyd case and all the stuff, right? So we're trying so it's true escapism, The other thing we did is that, I always wanted to do something that was more hybrid, so the second story I did was like more of it's more like text and image, so it's more like an illustrated story. And so I got this idea that the Mahes version of Lion Man guards the outside portal to this kind of like dream space kind of thing. And so that's why it's called The Lion Outside, But Blut Sangro is still like the villain, what I'm saying? He's always, I'm trying to figure out how to situate him as being the villain. Also maybe even joining him with APEP. It's just a lot of like remixing and rethinking of stuff,
So Damien, has this inspired you to do others?
Not, I had some when John and I were first talking about doing stuff with those characters. I had a story I'm still sort of messing with sometimes, but it was Ace Harlem 2047. where it's like Ace Harlem and
It's
kind of
awesome.
cyberpunk world, sort of. And this was years ago now. I haven't gotten back to it yet, but so that was one thing. It was going to be like kind of like a cyberpunk riff, but you find out that 2047 isn't the year; it's the model of Ace Harlem because they've been like cloning Ace Harlems, stuff like that. And then I had an idea for, I think it was supposed to be like a mentor character to Lion Man or something, but it was Lioness.
Lioness, yeah.
And that was a more like cosmic spacey one too. She had like laser claws and stuff. And I think she used like a quilt or like a, what was it, like a fractal cape to jump through dimensions or something. It was a bunch of stuff. But yeah, there's something weirdly liberating about taking pre-existing characters and just like turning them on their head and turn them inside out. I mean, that was kind of the fun and catharsis with Phantoma. I always put the emphasis in the wrong place. Also, it's because like originally she was like one of the white blonde lady queen of the jungle characters, other than the times when she'd just be like a floating blue skull head, because whatever. But so it was cool to like take that character and recontextualize it where it's a African American heroine, and then also not to spoil anything, but she like beats up the shitty white dude. So that's fun for me personally. It made
We need
me
more of that.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Place you can start. Oh wait, I guess I need to do it again. Hey everybody, you're at the Adventures of Lion Man BackerKit launch party. We're about a week early. It officially launches next Tuesday, but you can pledge early now and receive, if you do a physical level, print from David Brame's black and white version of Lion Man, and a free mystery comic for the first 30. We only have like 30 of them. So, there's that. So, Yvette, I know that you're working on the novel. Are you still working on that novel?
Yep. Still struggling through finishing a novel. But I'm currently doing a fellowship where I have to write 10,000 words a month. That's been helping me stay on track with that.
Is it from the story that I read in Seattle? Is it still that?
Yeah, it's expanding that. Yeah, exactly.
Because I love that. That was just such a fantastic thing that I guess we can't talk about. So do you ever think about doing comics again?
Oh, I would love to do comics again.
All right, that's good to know. Because it was fun. It was fun working with you. So the other thing that is in this is the public domains pinup gallery that we did. Basically, we're toying with the idea of possibly expanding this whole Lion Man universe. So we just kind of asked friends to do little reimaginings of their own of public domain characters. So we've had, I can't name everybody, so people are going to get upset, but folks like Nate Powell and Ezra Clayton Daniel, Ben Passmore, Krista Casano, who did Phantoma.
I like that one. That one's pretty good.
Yeah. Patrick Lay. My goodness, who else? I did already say Ben Bass. Anyway, you guys should look it up. It's like absolutely fantastic. But in that, like when Jamie Noguchi did his like Iron Lady thing, and it was like so like Run Shaw kind of like totally Hong Kong karate flicks. I kind of asked him if he would already want to do something with that because it just looks so fantastic. Like to me, because you made me a convert. It's just this idea that as our subtitle for the public domains thing is "The past is our playground," and it's just sort of, as you said, Damien, it's like this whole liberating thing of just kind of twisting everything around and just kind of doing whatever you want. Because some of them are actually like kind of offensive, or like insanely offensive. Yeah. Did you see he, she?
Yep.
Oh yeah. That one is not.
That's not. Yeah.
Not great.
Not great.
Good.
Not,
Well, you know, and not to mention like the wildly inappropriate racist images of people of Asian descent. You know, with Japanese. Holy crap! Yeah. You know, I was just thinking too, and we could talk about this later, but not now that you think about it, Bill, there was an aspect of Damien's story that I think is extremely compelling that actually could fit into, and we could talk about it later. But, but I'm like, anyway. But
well, as you know, I mean, you totally like suckered me because you know I'm a history nerd. So
right. So it's like,
and obviously, you know, since I fell in love with bell hooks in my early 20s, just like always, you know, deconstructing.
I was going to say a big influence on me about just the whole like public domain thing, besides Lion Man and trying to find like these alternative like Black characters, is The Shadow Hero by Gene Yang and Sonny Liu.
Right.
I've seen that book, but basically what they did is they took this character, the Green Turtle, and you know, there's some controversy about it because the character was supposedly Chinese and stuff, but you know, the publisher and actually the artist and writer was a Chinese American cartoonist, right? And the whole thing was that they kind of forced him to make the character even more pink to make sure that he was read as white, you know what I'm saying, and not Asian. And in kind of protest, he wouldn't draw the character in a way where you could actually see his face.
Really? That's what.
Yeah. So he was always turned to the back or to the side. You would never see his face, which is hilarious to see in a superhero story, right? And then the other thing is he had this like shadow turtle that was with him. And what Gene Yang and Sonny Liu did with that concept, I was like, this is so, to me, transformative, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, a lot of stuff is to borrow from what's her name? Oh shoot. Who came up with the idea of critical fabulation? Somebody help me. Sadia Hartman.
Sadia Hartman.
I'm like literally the only non-academic right here. So
yeah, because the idea is like, you know, you basically take fiction or like really an agency and you create like ways to connect the pieces of our history that we do know, you know what I'm saying? And so it's almost like you create these bridges between history and fiction and stuff, because you know that something like that really could probably exist, but it's almost like you're filling in the gaps with your stories. The first time I saw it, like, you know, just in film was probably Watermelon Woman by Cheryl Dunye. It's one of my favorite movies. So yeah, so that's kind of what this project is. Like you said, Bill, is like reclaiming these spaces and also remixing them. I mean, like Phantom to me is so hilarious because it's like we made it into like kind of a luchador kind of character. Yeah. So instead of her like turning into a flaming blue skull, she actually literally has on like a skull mask, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Anyway,
even though the flaming blue skull is kind of crazy. Like, did you see Krista's pinup? Like, I was.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I'm saying
that's like a fantastic.
Well, I like the take that they did. The Canadian one that Damien talked about earlier was like pretty cool. It was like, I think a Latina take on she was definitely powered down. You had to understand, like,
right, because she can like zap things and morph things, and
she's kind of like the Don Cheadle Captain Planet thing.
Yeah,
just turn people into trees and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she was kind of like the Spectre too, right? I mean, because basically her and like Stardust, which is another character he created, they just basically didn't have any limits to their powers.
Yeah, like I don't even like. I guess that kind of makes sense if they were riffing off of Superman, though, right?
I guess, yeah. He was called the Super Wizard.
I mean, it's sort of like you realize, like, I mean, because there were like tons of these like white saviors in Africa characters. Like, I had no idea that, like,
it was straight up a whole genre.
Just like,
yeah,
like it could fill like libraries. I would love to like play around with that.
Yeah, no. I mean,
I mean, I don't know if like compile it, not necessarily write it, because reverse migration or whatever. But yeah, it's just sort of like this really fascinating kind of thing. I mean, because like they rewrite our history like literally all the time, right?
Yep.
Like we are right in the heart of like the process right now. So it's just sort of like, why not? Right.
I mean, I look at the story, that kind of reclamation as a site of resistance, definitely. You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah. Well, I mean, right now, I guess, yeah, just waking up in the morning, it almost feels like resistance right now. Just like going to work. But I guess we should. Oh wait, let me do it one more time. No, let's any kind of like
Sorry.
final words or the things that you like most about this project, or what is it like working on these different things? And like, what was and for you, Mike, like, what were the response like? Because you guys made like free copies of the first issue, for like a bunch of kids, right? So like, what was that reaction like?
So I'll take the first part first. The thing I love about this project, and if you're watching, you should definitely get it. Definitely pick up a copy. Is it's done in the most old school, wonderfully collaborative, creative, interesting way, right? So the thing that I just adore about this particular anthology is that it is made intentionally. And I know it might sound crazy a little bit, but like, it's done like they would do, like it was done in 1947.
Yep.
Right. It's got this verisimilitude because it's done in the way it was done in 1947. Right. A bunch of people had a bunch of cool ideas and they were like, let's just go. Let's let it rip. This your idea? This your idea? Oh, you like romance comics? Oh, you like this? You know, I'm working on a book about the character Blue Beetle and all of these things. You know why I have all these characters have all these wild powers? Because they didn't know what they were doing. They were just like,
well, that's fair.
She got laser eyes. Yeah, bet she got
laser eyes.
Yeah, why does she not have? Yeah, she got a blue skull. Because of course, and she turns people into trees. Nobody knew what they were doing. They knew they had stories to tell.
It's sort of like reading Tristram Shandy with comics,
right?
Yeah,
and so it's done in this. It's done in the anthology is done in such a way that it inspires other people to tell stories, right? You see these stories and you're like, there's always stories to tell in whatever. And one of the things I love about what John said is every generation, right? Like, what if Lion Man never got canceled, right? Well, then what would it look like in the 50s, 60s, 70s? Every generation has their stories to tell, right? And that this is a continuation of that tradition, right? So it's really inspiring to me. And that's one of the things, the work that I do, is with young folks developing their own stories. What stories do they have to tell? Do they want to tell? How do they want to tell them? The radical act of telling your story in the future is disruptive, right? And so what we did, for instance, is they created. We didn't tell them what to create, but they saw this character, the Lion Man in the tower, and they just felt compelled not because they were copying, right? It wasn't this, well, they made a superhero, I'm going to make a superhero, but there was a response, right? This idea of, I want to do that too. That looks amazing. I have this great idea. And so they created their own, and we put out just a bunch of sort of pinups. They made their own comic. We one group of kids just wrote their own character bio, right? And it was they just decided to world build this character, but they didn't want to draw it. So we invited a local artist to just do a turnaround, and we just did these things back to back. But we were very intentional that this was this character story, or the story came from these young folks. And so we're continuing to do that, working with a bunch of folks here in California, in New York, across the country, doing this kind of work. And here at St. Cloud State, I'll plug a little bit the Institute for Speculative Design and Education is how to not how do you make a curriculum out of this, but what does this look like in educational spaces, in science, in STEM classes, in language arts classes, across the curriculum, in higher ed, et cetera, in young, in pre-K. What does it mean to think about and speculate about your future at 6, at 60, right? Particularly inspired by these stories, right? The thing I love about the public domain characters, and I'll end with this, is the thing about Lion Man is he feels real because he is real. If that, right? And I know it sounds wild, but in 1947 it was an idea, and then it put pen to paper, and it existed, and it still exists, right? Like that character, this anthology is a continuation of that work, an outgrowth, if not a continuation of that same work, which to me is really, really inspiring because, as you said, just heavy hitters to a 6th grader are all telling these stories because that's one thing that is almost, for lack of a better, I'm thinking about Bubba, it's bulletproof. It's eternal, right? It's right. A story can last forever. It's one of the only things that defies entropy, right? And so that's why I love this project. I love all the people on this call, and thanks, Bill, for letting me be a part of it, man.
No,
The end.
thank
Ta-da.
you.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
He said, "Ta-da."
Yvette, if you want to add some kind of closing words, I guess.
Yeah, I just love the collaborative spirit of this project, and I'm excited for it to be out in the world. I enjoyed figuring out how to modernize some of the aspects of the story, make it fun, make it Pan-African, make it modern.
It's so
And
good.
I'm excited for
It's
everybody
so
to
good.
see it.
Thank you. Damien?
Yeah, I just I guess kind of going off like Mike, what you're saying, there's an ad, like a house ad in the original All Negro Comics that features like all the characters hanging out together.
Yes.
And it has,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of enlivened by this energy of not just, hey, let's make a bunch of cool stories, but also we're like sort of all in this together. Like there's a definite uplift involved in the creation of the characters, and I think that's carried on like into this project and with all these types of stories we're talking about. Also, I would like to say that the Phantoma story, or the book we were originally doing, it was a very limited page count. So I know how she gets the skull mask, and it does flame sometimes. I just didn't get the story. So if anyone wants to know about the flaming one, you should probably get this book so there could be another one.
There you go.
Good totally. And John?
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things I love about this project is the fact that it's something that we had been cobbling around with for a while in different stages with the various creators, and that it kind of like surprised me that it was finished. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like it was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, we actually have done a lot of work, and this is a book now.
Yeah, it's been like, because you were already years into it before you approached me about it.
Right. We did the Phantoma story like a while ago, and then we had already started like compiling things, and we just needed like a space to put it, and it was hella fun, and it basically served the purpose what we kind of intended. It was a bunch of folk who were really into these characters that made something that was invigorating and joyous, and it gave us it gave us some ideas for future things to get into. So I'm excited about it. I'm proud of the work that we did on it. Yeah. So
yeah, me too. It's like just flipping through it. Of course, now with all the tariffs, going to the printer is like Chopin's Death March is. I just hear it, but for me, like John bringing it to me, like because at first I was like, and then I thought about the just playing, as I said, like the past is our playground, and just playing on that because that's generally what I do anyway, right? With my other creative works, is a lot of it is just tied to the past, even if it's science fiction. But I mean, for me, I think like as a black publisher, looking at just like what RNC Evans did at the time that he did, like I think like for
Yeah.
me, this is just like this fantastic kind of, because I know how hard it is like 80 years later. Like, and the fact that he was like crazy enough to just be like, no, I can do this. Like, and he did it. And then, of course, you know, it's kind of hard to fight those kinds of economic forces. But the fact that like he was able to do it, and then, you know, the fact that he, even though he didn't live in Pittsburgh and wasn't from Pittsburgh, so from the other side of the state, that he did it in Pittsburgh. You know, it goes back to my whole Black Pittsburgh and Black speculative arts thing, because, well, you know, Blake Huts of Africa, like from the very beginning, like that's in Pittsburgh. Like, you know, it just keeps going on and on and on. And the Pittsburgh Courier and Scholar and all that stuff. So, like, for me, I'm just like, it's like a future project that is paying homage to the past, which is kind of just like what I feel like my creative life is, right? So it's sort of like another one of these full circle moments. So this is absolutely fantastic to just like be able to, like, in our way, highlight what he did, right? And what they did as like a whole creative team. You know, and it's really funny because like every blue moon, even this weekend when I was out, like I ran into an older gentleman talking about like Ace Harlem, right? Like it's just like ALL NEGRO Comics, you know, because they did that hardcover reprint like a couple of years ago. It's just like, you know, the fact that like this is kind of living on and is like, as you said, Mike, like, you know, stories don't die.
Right.
And like just the model, like honoring that model, not knowing originally that that's one of the people who I was emulating, right? And then just sort of, as you said, it's like spurred other ideas already. You know, I already talked to like an artist about maybe possibly doing another line. Man, we talked about like one shots and anthologies, like you know, because the possibilities are endless. But for now, watch this. We are talking about the Adventures of Lion Man BackerKit launch party. Please feel free to back it today, even though it does not launch until next Tuesday. The link is at the beginning of the comments if you can. We appreciate everybody being here. Please feel free to signal boost. We have to get roughly 500 backers for this bad boy. Or maybe we should tariff it and like ask for like another 25% because that's what paper's gonna cost. Anyway, thank you everybody. Thank y'all for being a part of this, bringing it to us, and then being a part of this. I mean, I'm really excited. I think that we've come out with something that, or we are coming out with something that a lot of people are really, really going to enjoy. And I think that they'll be talking about it for years to come. So thanks everybody for dropping by. Thanks again to Mike, Damien, Yvette, and John. I'm sure we will be spending a lot of time together this next month. Yep. So have a good one, everybody. Double V, since we're talking about World War II.